this video, we are dropping a underwater camera 600 feet deep on a sunken ship for some of the best tasting fish in the ocean. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. Once we made our way out of the inlet, we ran 5 miles north to our spot. Once we got to our spot, we start setting up our rig. And our setup for this rig was a little complicated. What we had on top was a light, and the reason we use a light is because it is so dark 600 feet below the surface. So this light helps the fish see our bait. Once we attached our light, we now start getting our bait ready to go. And what we had for bait was some squid, and what we do is really easy. We took our squid and we cut it into 3 small pieces. As you guys can see, then all we did was we attached it to our hooks. And squid is by far the best bait for deep dropping down here in South Florida. So once we rigged up our bait, we now attached a camera to our line. Once the camera was all set, we start making our way down to the bottom. And when you're dropping 600 feet deep, it does take a good amount of time to hit bottom. I would say it took us about 2 to 3 minutes on each drop just to hit the bottom. So we now switch over to our camera point of view. And I'm going to show you guys the full drop on this first drop, just because I want to show you guys how fast it gets dark down there. And also, it shows if you're in the right spot, how fast you get bites. The spot is everything when you're doing this kind of fishing, just because if you're in the wrong spot, you could fish for 3 hours and you just won't get a single bite. So we continue our way down to the bottom, and let me know in the comments down below where you guys think we should drop this camera next. I really find it so cool to drop this camera 600 feet deep on these sunken ships or on structure, just because you never know what's going to swim up to your camera. Also, if you guys can hit that sub button, tilefish season now opens for us on January 1st, so we will have an underwater golden tilefish video coming out soon. So as I told you guys earlier, we're now about 1 minute and 15 seconds into dropping down, and it's already getting really dark down there. And this is why it's so important to add that light we showed you guys earlier in this video on top of the rig, just because without that light, I don't think there would be a lot of action. We now just hit bottom, and as you guys can see, it is pitch black down there right now. And the reasoning for this is because when the weight hits in the very beginning, the camera usually falls into the mud. But after a couple seconds of sitting in the mud, we were able to break free, and that's when this fish showed up. That little white spot you guys see on the bottom left is actually the fish. And these tilefish sit right on the bottom, so if your bait is not directly sitting on the bottom, they will not bite your hook. But after a couple seconds, this fish finally hit the bottom hook, and we were hooked up to this fish. So we started bringing in this tilefish, and this was a really nice sized fish here. And on this next drop, we caught a sea monster. I have never caught one of these fish before, so I can't wait to show you guys the underwater footage of this giant monster. As we continue to bring this fish up, and on the way up of just bringing these fish in, it usually takes about 5 minutes just to bring them up. And on a day that the current is really bad, it can take all the way up to 10 minutes just to bring in your lines, just because you have to continue to let out so much line. So we now have this fish right near the boat, and we saw this nice sized blue line tilefish. We were able to flip this fish in the boat and get this beautiful fish. And these blue line tilefish don't get too big. So after we put this fish on ice, we started rigging up for our next drop. We now had some squid pre-cut, so once we added more squid back on our chicken rig, we were ready to make drop number 2, and this is where we caught the sea monster. So once we repositioned the boat back on our spot, we dropped back down the camera. And this is the longest part about deep dropping. It's the dropping down the baits and bringing up the baits. This process usually takes us a good 10 to 15 minutes every single drop. And if you guys are enjoying this content, we would really appreciate if you guys can drop a like on this video. These videos usually take us hours to film. We are now seconds from hitting the bottom, and for some reason on this drop, the camera seemed a lot clearer when we hit bottom. So we now just hit bottom, and we sat on bottom for a couple of seconds this drop. So then I reeled the baits up just a tad bit, and that's when the sea monster showed up. So the first fish here hit the squid, and on this drop we caught 2 different fish, and they were both different species, which is always so cool. So this fish started going nuts on the bottom, and that's when this other fish showed up and hit our other hook. So I slowly started to pull these fish up off the bottom. And right now, since it's so dark, it's hard to see these fish. But as the camera got brighter, we saw a tilefish, and that's when we saw this giant eel on our hook. And this is the first time I have ever caught an eel, which was pretty cool. And let me know in the comments down below if you guys know what kind of species of eel this is. And if you guys enjoy this content, let me know in the comments down below where would you guys want to see us drop this camera next. So we continued to bring these fish up, and these tilefish that we were catching on this day make an awesome dinner. They're definitely one of my favorite eating bottom fish. We now have these fish 100 feet right under the boat, and when we saw this eel right near the boat, we didn't want to put this fish in our boat, so we were successfully able to use our pliers and pull the hook out of this eel to release him safely. And we hope you guys enjoyed this underwater barjacks video, and we hope to see you guys in the next Barjacks family fishing video.